Why is quality wealth building advice so difficult to find online, on TV, or even in books? Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. Over the years, I've worked with millionaires, multimillionaires, executives in companies, high-income professionals who make $150,000, $250,000 a year, people in the top 10% and above earnings. I've worked with people who own lots of land, who own a lot of rental properties, all across the board. Now, my focus is risk management. My focus is more of a reporter than an expert in these areas. And what I found is it's extremely difficult to find reliable information on how to address taboos around money, how to build wealth, how to turn income into net worth, how to transform business relationships into profits. And there's some very simple reasons why it's so difficult. First off, there are many more people who have less income than you, who have less net worth, who are basically part of the larger masses. Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just saying when you have volume, you have the opportunity of media leverage in order to present products and services, to offer solutions, and to present a variety of perspectives. But if you're considering your audience, you really have to focus on the general ideas and concepts. So, for example, the impact of inflation on fuel prices and how it's hurting the poor. You'll find very few articles about how inflation in fuel prices is impacting fleet managers or folks who own trucking companies, because there's simply fewer of them, and it doesn't have the broad audience appeal. So when you're looking in media for answers, if you're looking on websites for answers, the website has an incentive to present information relevant to the largest number of visitors rather than a small few select individuals. The other factor is that if you have money or a high income, there's an assumption that you can simply pay for services. So there's CPAs, certified financial planners, there's wealth management publications, there's other things that are very specific to high income people. However, they are mostly paid services, and they're not going for the top 10%, they're going for the top 1%. Now, by the way, you can make $450,000 a year and be in the top 1%. The top 1% goes from there to, millions and millions of dollars a year earning. But these paid services would much rather have an Elon Musk as a customer, or even somebody 2 or 3 levels down below him, than they would an individual who's in the top 10 to 5% of incomes. There's also factors in net worth. And by the way, you may not be aware, but there are, I think, 20 million people who have a $5 billion or more in net worth. It's like a lot of people who have $250,000 a year and above incomes, the mass affluent. It is a category of 20 or 30 million people just in the United States. Now, if you serve clients worldwide, in a much broader network of people, there's probably about 1 billion people out there in this category. But again, if you have a paid service, you're a private bank, you're a financial investor or advisor, you're getting commissions, you don't want to work with relatively small numbers, you want to work with very big numbers. So if you have a net worth of $2 or $3 million and a high income of $150,000 to $300,000, then you're going to be ideal for some services providers, but not sought after. They're going to either want to have as many people come through as possible with very simple solutions, kind of cookie cutter, or they're going to want to have people who have very high incomes, very high net worths for very custom solutions. So one of the things that we try to do with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, this newsletter, is to bring you a sampling of the opportunities that are available out there. And also to dispel many of the myths. It's a publication. I'm not offering financial services. I often do recommend CPAs, lawyers, financial planners, banking services, and things as a broad recommendation. But I'm not managing your money. I'm simply a publication that helps me discover new solutions, because I found it difficult to get good ideas and to get good advice about money management or converting income into net worth. And so that's my focus. So I think I would do better, though, if I focused on like the Susie Orman audience or the Dave Ramsey audience, because there's simply more of those people. However, that's not where I want to live. That's not the type of people that I already interact with. That's not the type of folks that come to me for advice. Many of my clients are business owners, entrepreneurs, high-income professionals, services providers. They have a specialty skill that they're transitioning from trading dollars for hour into a more residual income, more investment income. And again, as I don't give investment advice, I do provide the models necessary to transform assets into cash flow. Now, I also try to dispel the myths such as how intergenerational wealth is a prime contributor to inequality. All these money fears. The money is the root of all evil. Well, no, not really. Money's simply a medium of exchange. It has, if you have a stack of $100 bills on your desk in your office and you step back and look at that money, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. The only way money works is if you circulate it in an economy. Now, you could have money and amplify behaviors, negative behaviors you already have, and those will influence where you apply money. And I do have a bias. I like to invest in areas that are sustainable, that increase value over time, that are more circular than one-directional in spending. Personally, if you're going to invest money, I'd like it all to come back to you in the shortest period of time as possible. But again, the life skills and the happy memories will come when you have the means to secure yourself against long-term changes. 10 years ago, you might not have been talking about inflation, even though it was here and it's been around for a while. It's not going to be $6 a gallon fuel in California. It's not going to be $5 a gallon fuel on the East Coast. Again, those numbers don't even matter. See, I want to talk about financial education necessary to help you understand how money works. It doesn't matter if gas costs $6 a gallon. And I know you're saying, oh my gosh, but I'm seeing how the surge in fuel prices hurt poorer Americans the most. And how, I have to put $100 in fuel in my fuel tank. And yes. But again, the factors that create wealth that you will not see on all these other platforms, unless you're able to invest in somebody or go to a conference or hire a family office or have a personal advisor who will spend the time with you. I've had great fortune to have some CPAs that will spend the time to explain things, tax attorneys that will sit down and explain structure. But my point being is if that $6 a gallon goes in your tank and you apply that vehicle in such a way that produces $12 per equivalent gallon, then you are ahead of the game. See, I worked a lot with fleet managers, and if a vehicle costs 55 cents a mile, so that was the IRS deduction, 55 cents a mile, their goal was to put that vehicle on the road producing 65 cents a mile. So the vehicle has to do something that increases the income above the expense of operating that vehicle. It's a very simple concept, but it's not taught. People talk about, oh, this car is more fuel efficient. This car does that. No, if you know the cost of your vehicle, and I use 55 cents because that's the IRS designation, but it could be 18 cents a mile depending on the fuel efficiency of the vehicle. It could be $3 a mile depending on the maintenance or the age of the vehicle. You've got to know these things, and by knowing these things, you can make good decisions about applying resources. So a lot of folks will say, look, these truckers, they don't care anything about the environment. They have these diesel vehicles that are spewing smoke into the air and destroying our lungs. No, many of them who are successful. Now, I'm not going to argue about the unsuccessful ones. It is shown that poor people have higher carbon footprints than anybody on the planet because they don't have the resources to purchase more energy efficient vehicles, to invest in alternative means of production. Now, also we'll note that Exxon kind of made up the carbon footprint concept, and it's kind of a marketing ploy more than an actual thing. But my point being is if you have means in excess of your needs, you have more choices. And somebody operating 100 trucks, so I was working with this company and they were a short term freight. So they would pick up from a terminal and they would deliver within probably a 4-hour drive. And they had 100 and some tractor trailers. And their concern was to lower their fuel costs, not by getting cheaper fuel. They didn't care how much the fuel cost. What they wanted was more efficient equipment, lower emissions. So a diesel truck, you could put a recirculator on a diesel truck to get more miles out of every gallon. They wanted to have a high efficiency in the sense of the vehicle on the road the majority of the time. So they were investing in how they dispatch vehicles. There's a whole system around that. Now, if you were to write a publication on how fleet managers can increase their return on investment and not care about the fuel costs as much, then there would be maybe 5,000 people in the country that would care. There's probably about 20,000 people in that type of job, but only about 5,000 would even have any interest. Now, you can make some money on that and it can be profitable. But again, large corporations are not going to invest in that kind of system or that kind of opportunity. There's not a lot of back end revenue for that because someone who's trying to save money is not going to pay someone else to save money necessarily, especially if what they pay could be more than what they would save. And ultimately, that kind of solution is probably better on a one-to-one situation because a fleet manager has more concerns than just the price of fuel. So I used my knowledge about that in order to write materials and to support conferences to create results in that area. But it's not something you're going to make a fortune on. You're going to make $50,000, $60,000 a year on it. It's not really worth the time and effort. It doesn't scale very well. But my point being, again, is what does scale very well is that mass audience, the mass consumer. How do we train the maximum number of people to buy as much as possible and to do it without thinking because we can offer them solutions to bail them out? They're not doing cost-benefit analysis. They're not looking at buying assets that cash flow. They're not interested in investing in the maintenance of their wealth because they don't believe they have very much. And then there's a whole big crowd out there that's talking about inequality and, pay gaps between the owners and this whole pay gap between the owner and the worker is just ridiculous. That owner might have been working for years, long before that worker was there, with no pay. And so if you average their salary over the lifetime of being in that position, it's not really all that exciting. Now, there's other perks of being the boss. Don't get me wrong. Another factor, too, is the gender pay gap that a lot of folks talk about. In the wealthy circles, they don't have that because a woman who invests in her education, who gains the experience and decides to go into a career and has a skill set, if you look at the individual skill banded by experience level, the pays are the same. And the further evidence of that is that if a company could hire a highly talented woman for less money than they could a man, people are saying there's a 30% difference. Well, if a company who wants to be more profitable could hire somebody at a 30% discount for equivalent experience, equivalent skill, and equivalent workout output, then they would do that all day long. Why would you hire a man and pay more? It just doesn't work that way. And the companies who do hire men just because they're men would actually have a higher overhead and over time would be less profitable. So my point being is there's an unlimited supply of advice for the general population. Much of this advice is designed to influence them rather than to educate them. And then there is a small amount of insight available for the high-income professional, for the individual who wants to convert income into net worth, who wants to buy assets that cash flow, who want to invest. But the majority of the folks in that marketplace are focusing on the very top end. And don't get me wrong, I would much rather have a billionaire client than a millionaire client. A billionaire client doesn't ask a lot of questions. They simply just pay for services and look at the results. And very often, they don't even pay for the services. Their family office pays for it. Their CPA pays for it. Somebody in the supply chain will bring a person like me on to look at structure, strategy, strategic approach, impacts of long-term trends, hedging, risk management, those types of elements that you probably didn't even know existed before you got involved with this podcast. Now, if you think that you're going to come to a podcast like this and there'll be like 100,000 listeners and there'll be, every podcast is going to have thousands of downloads, it's just not going to happen. The real insights, the economists, the conservative publications, the wealth managers, they aren't in the public media because it's not worth their time or effort. And in fact, many times what I do is I will produce materials online to test. And then based on those tests, we'll produce materials that I send directly to people who are in my target audience. So essentially what you're listening to here is only designed to get you information at a high level so that if you are interested in moving forward on a topic, we can talk specific to your situation, or you'll go to my website and buy a special report, or you'll go to, you'll join the paid newsletter, something like that. The key to understand is the reason why there is so much information that is even detrimental to the high income professional, to the individual making an above average earning, is because there are more people with less discretion that don't make above average who are available to sell services to, that are not intellectually thinking about their money, who have myths associated with fear and greed. And there's many taboos that distract them from the sense of, think about it this way. If money is a medium of exchange, so money buys food, nobody's going to complain about a surplus of food. If you come home to your house and you have a surplus of food, meaning every day there are 3 meals a day, everybody gets plenty to eat, and there's a little bit of food left over at the end. It's high quality, high value food. Nobody's going to say they're greedy for feeding their family. But God forbid you have enough money to have a vacation home or a second car, or you have enough money available to invest or buy a business. And now the people look at you and say, oh my gosh, all that surplus, you should give some of that surplus to other people. It's just how people's relationship with money is so distorted. But again, that's very useful, because if you can get a bunch of people to occupy Wall Street, or to pressure your competitors into raising their minimum wage, or to change the law in order to increase costs and hurdles for new businesses, then you can win in the long run. Now, when I talk about sustainable wealth secrets, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. That's social engineering that larger companies use to maintain their position. But ultimately, you won't find reliable and useful information about transforming income into net worth in the general population, because the general population simply doesn't care. There won't be YouTube videos. There won't be conferences that are simulcast online. There won't be materials. You're going to find that in home study kits. You're going to find good materials by hiring a professional, and we talk a lot about how to hire professionals. You're going to find that after you've incorporated and set up a business, and you have a comptroller, or you have somebody on staff that's managing money. And you also won't hear that it's not just about the money. If you don't have personal freedom, if you don't have financial security, if you don't have a currency that keeps up and maintains a low volatility environment, then you got bigger problems. But again, this is economics. This is finance. This is stuff that's too complex for the general population, so it's not even discussed. That's why what we do here, we focus again on the working professional, the business owner, the entrepreneur, the person who knows that money is simply, it's a tool, and they want to learn how to use the tool better so that they can have more of it, so that it comes to them more easily, and so that also your family can be taken care of. Intergenerational wealth is the best thing you can do to protect your family. Now, how you structure it matters. You don't want to give an 18-year-old a trust fund and no moral compass, or no structure to trickle that money out over time. Having extra money that you can contribute to charities or local community, that you could be more generous. How can that be wrong? How can that be wrong? But again, if you can get the masses to rise up against a group of people that they do not know, that they do not interact with, and put pressure on the ability for those people to create wealth themselves, then ultimately you gain or retain a certain level of control. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. If you want to have control over anything, it should be your ability to transform your income into net worth, your ability to accumulate assets that cash flow and have the surplus necessary to make the decisions you want to make and to do the things that you want to do. That's what you're going to discover here at Sustainable Wealth Secrets. Your questions will be answered at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Simply go to the contact page and drop me a note. Send me a fax. Write me a letter. I love getting letters in the mail, and I will answer your questions either in a podcast or just basically send you materials that will help you out. I'm not trying to get clients. Again, I don't manage money. I don't do financial services. My focus is the structure, the risk management, the plan for accumulation. And that's what you get here. Thanks for listening again. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets.